I'll just quickly ask you to introduce yourself to the audience, and then we'll begin our Q&A.
Yeah, hi everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Jayesh from Bertelsmann India Investments. Before I talk about myself, actually first about the fund. We are a $500 million VC fund that invests in Series B startups. We typically put $5 to $15 million checks in companies that are anywhere between $50 and $150 million. We're a sector agnostic fund, which means we invest across sectors. Some of our portfolio companies are Licious, Shiprocket, Pepperfry, Eruditus, and a bunch of other names. I've named the names that you might be familiar with, but are also very good portfolio companies outside of that. I'm the CFO at the fund, and I take care of deal execution, portfolio management, and a few other topics.
Great, thanks. So I'm Vikram. I'm a partner and the Chief Investment Officer at Inflection Point Ventures. We are an early stage VC. We look at investing in pre-seed, seed, all the way up to Series A. And through our multiple other funds, we also invest up to Series B. So our Category 1 fund is about $130 million deployed right now. And we've got another $50 million fund called FISIS. So again, sector agnostic, stage agnostic, geography agnostic. We don't cut as large checks as you guys, but we do anywhere from probably $100,000 to about a couple of $1 million.
So I want to understand, when you are investing in various startups and they have plans to further go international and do cross-border investments, what kind of advice do you put in place before they step out on the journey?
Yeah, I think it's a very broad-based question to start with, but I think, typically VC at least, so I'm guessing the question comes from a place where you're already an established business in India. Now you're looking at, can I do something similar in another country, right, globally? Typically the advice we go with is to first look at, are you at the right stage to do this? Because it's all about prioritization. It makes sense for many companies to be in many countries. But it's about prioritization of capital and prioritization of bandwidth, right? Because it's down to founder bandwidth, it's down to functional bandwidth, it's down to a bunch of other things, right? Because it's not, in most cases, it's not like you take the same product and just launch it in another country. There is a level of localization involved, there's a level of planning and strategy involved. So if you have the capital and you have the bandwidth, that's when it makes sense. And therefore, the easiest way to do it, of course, is to find the immediate adjacency to what you're already doing. Now, that adjacency could be based on the product itself. It could be based on the type of founding capability, etc. So that's how I see it.
See, if you're a business that's kind of starting at India first and then going global or expanding, the only thing that you would need to do first is nail it before you scale it. So get your home story right, and then look at going outside, right? Like Jay said, capital conservation is very, very key. The only other thing that I would add on is if you're expanding into other markets, don't scale too rapidly. Look at core competencies, understand the market, understand the cultural customer behavior, and as you build out entries into specific markets. But each sector kind of behaves very differently. Consumer markets behave differently, tech markets behave differently. So you would need to kind of understand what is required in each of the geographies that you're going to get into. Study them well and then get into it.
So in the technology world, they always say the world is your oyster. So when they, of course, are looking at international markets in that way, do you further help them in connecting with the right people, with building the right partners in place?
See, early stage investments, I would say, is not only about financial investment. It's also about investing your experience and your connects, right? So you would need to kind of introduce them to the various markets, various potential consumers, and test those markets out and replay it back to product development and see how they can take a better, more stronger product back into that specific geography. So connections are essential, but also fine-tuning, reworking, rewiring the products is also something where you need to support before they actually enter the market.
Okay. Do you have any thoughts around it?
Yeah, meaning I think it is sort of like a startup within a startup, right? Like the way you have to see it is you have already established a company now in India, right? And you're doing pretty well. This is the time at which you're thinking of now can I do it in another country? The important part really is to think of it as another venture altogether, while your investors can bring you the right connections. And of course, it is down to not just bringing capital for investors, it's also about making the right connections and introducing the right ecosystem to the founders. Ultimately, now the founder is stepping into the shoes of an investor because now he's becoming a strategic investor, looking at another geography and thinking first whether I would want to invest in a company in that geography. Right, so it's about making that mindset shift from a founder to an investor at that point, which means beyond just the connections that the investor makes, the number one key is to find your right anchors, right? So if you're making an investment in a new country, then you need to have an anchor person. You can't sit afar and then try to build in a different country. You would need to find first, let's say, a CEO type person of that for that country, for that region, who understands the needs of customers there, who knows what tech build out means and how to sell, what the distribution channels are, and and stuff like that. So your first port of call is to find that right anchor. And of course, there are multiple strategies to go there, and we'll probably discuss that as we think about it. But I think finding that anchor person is super critical.
Sure. Any anecdote you would like to share from your portfolio companies? How you further help them or how they treated the path?
So I'll just extend to what Jay said, right? Exactly this. We have an investment in a portfolio company which is into AI, right? And more of voice-based AI. And as they were expanding, whilst the CEO and the person who's developing the product is based in India and developing it, he hired a senior salesperson to be on the ground in the Europe and the Middle East markets, right? So a senior, more seasoned industry veteran who knows how to navigate new territories, new sales, whilst the CEO and the CTO are developing the product and the technologies, while they are stretching the boundaries in the tech side, the sales side is again in the geography, on the ground, done by a more seasoned veteran, right? And that is something that people have done. Similarly, let me take another example of another portfolio company of ours called BlueSmart, right? They first nailed Gurgaon.
Yeah.
Then they had Bangalore. Then they went into Dubai, right? But there is a team, there is a seasoned player who's going to take decisions on the ground in a foreign geography as well, right? So one, go step by step. Second, have those decision makers in each of those geographies.
Yeah, I think anecdotally we have the benefit of seeing a few of our SaaS companies play this out quite well. And I can talk about one SaaS company where they looked at 2-3 different strategies in different countries. So they didn't do a country by country approach. They launched in 3 different countries. In one of the countries, they took a distribution channel approach where they sat afar, like I was saying, and they found a particular distributor who would basically take care of everything local. Right now, that is the cheap and easy way of doing it in that sense, because now you're not setting up a presence in the other country. You're instead banking on an already established player there to be able to take your products to market. That was one way that they did it. In another country, the same company went, set up their own entity, found a country head, found a local sales team. Of course, not everything was in-house, portions were outsourced, but it was still their outfit, and that was their local outfit, and they managed it almost like an investment, right? And there's no right way of doing it, but in this particular, since you asked for an anecdote, the way it played out was the country where they set it up as through a distributor network. There was early traction. It was cheap, easy, and they loved it. But beyond a point, they couldn't scale that because the distributor had other priorities. And then when they wanted to set up more permanently in that location, it was much harder because the distributor itself came in the way of getting it done, right? So having the right, because when you enter a jurisdiction, you want to find the easiest path, the path of least resistance. And that often leads you to the wrong path. Sometimes doing it the harder way might be the right answer, even if it's more expensive to start with.
Okay. So in that case, do you suggest, as an entrepreneur, if that's my future aim, I should look at investors who have already worked, are present in the global market already, because they will further be able to help me navigate the way forward in terms of the regulations and other things?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's down to finding the right investor, right? And the right investor is one who can bring the right amount of capital, yes, but also the right amount of insight. Today, luckily in India, I think the investor ecosystem has matured so much that it's not very hard to find an investor like that, right? Like I think you'd find most funds are quite well placed to give you the right advice and make the right connections. Of course, in specific sectors, there would be specific investors who make more sense because there are very specific needs that can be filled out by those investors. But otherwise, I think most funds have those capabilities, right?
An interesting point that I would just add on to that is that if it's a product or a consumer or any of these other sectors, right, are not necessarily enterprise tech, you will actually find that the consumers become very good net promoters. And they do a lot of the groundwork in new geographies to take you to the right people, and they spread that word of mouth actually does a lot of the groundwork for you, right? So if you get your customer right and your product right, and it resonates with the customer, they do a lot of the entry work in that geography. And especially, let's say, for example, right, I'll just take a very simple thing. If you have a product and it resonates with a non-resident Indian in the GCC market, he's going to spread the work across the community. So you will figure out through those connections, the regulatory, the other aspects, and one leads to the other. And that's a very powerful network. A lot of companies, I would say, realize a little later in the game. But if done earlier, it actually accelerates the growth faster.
So when you are, talking to entrepreneurs and when you are investing in them and you look at the long-term play, do you also further see, okay, does the product or service has a fitment to further go global or not? I mean, how much does that play in terms of your investment decision?
I think for both of us, the answer might be slightly different because of the stage we come in at. So I am a Series B investor. So for us, we come in at a stage where the company already has product market fit in at least one location, which means there's a product, the market likes it, and at some scale, right? Not at a very small scale. That could mean that they're already at, say, a $2-3 million, $5 million revenue run rate. Now, at that particular scale, when we look at a company, we try to underwrite at least the India thesis, right? Assuming it's an India-based company, then we look at underwriting that thesis where the PMF exists. If there is a potential to go abroad and the PMF is not yet established, we don't value that portion yet. When I say value, we value it, but we don't take it into the valuation of the company yet because of the fact that that is a plus side, right? And that should be valued very differently because of the fact that it's not yet started. It has the same risks and rewards as an early stage company, right? So you are investing based on the valuation of an early growth stage company, and the overseas element has an early stage element to it. And therefore valuation would be largely for the India element. So we definitely love companies that have potential to do it abroad, but we underwrite the thesis of India at that stage.
Okay, how about you?
See, being early stage for us, it's again that you have to fix at least one part of the story right and get it correct, right? Some start with India as the base and some start global right away. Yes. So it's more about how do you get your PMF that we look at. But if there is a global expansion potential, we definitely factor it into our investment. But at an early stage, apart from probably a little bit of valuation negotiation, it doesn't really have much of a bearing. Because the story will have to kind of play out over a 3-4 year period before it becomes a significant factor to consider. Because here you're still trying to get the story right.
Okay. With this, we would also like to open the floor for questions. In case you have a question, please raise your hand. Can we pass on the mic here to the gentleman?
Hello. Yeah, it is question very specific to us. We are at very early stage, let's say MVP stage, and for that we tried, let's say 200, 300 B2C, so 200, 300. We tried it here in India to see whether we are getting amount or not. Now, same thing of trial or proof of concept, we want to do, let's say some other place. So what do you suggest in that? We cannot keep a person there until, because we are not even looking for funding upfront. So in that stage, what do you suggest? Because what kind of trial and proof of concept we did here, we want to do in, let's say, Middle East or somewhere there. So what do you suggest in that? Is it, or what is your alternative for it? What should we do in this case?
So I'll probably pick it up given its early stage, right? I'd break down that aspect into two parts. See, there is a tech PMF and a customer understanding. Now, you're talking about demand and supply. Supply is what you're building out. The demand can come from India or other geographies. So you would have to kind of invest time to understand your customer's persona, the customer's behavior, the pricing, what he requires, etc., etc. So if you're saying that you're not going to be able to position anybody in the other geography, I think you at least need to talk to customers there and pitch yourself and learn from them, right? Customers give you the best insights when you're developing products. And so therefore, the customer classification and the go-to-market, you would have to build first and test it at least before you can fine-tune, and maybe as a next step, put somebody there to fine-tune it on the ground.
Thank you.
The gentleman here had a question.
Hello, good afternoon. This is more of a general question. If you have cracked the Indian market, what is the challenge you face if you are, we have not pinpointed on which country to go, but what is the general challenge you find when you go global or global stage?
Yeah, so I think going global, you have every challenge that you face when you start local, right? Like whether it is the product itself. Like I can give you the example of, let's say, McDonald's, right? Like when McDonald's came to India, what everyone loves about it is the McAloo Tikki. Now, if they had to actually launch with the same menu that they had in the US, it wouldn't have made sense for India, right? So now, similarly, when you go abroad, first you have to crack your product. You might have to make customizations there. So there are challenges around that because, again, it's down to, see, every problem can be solved. It's always about resource limitation, like I was saying initially. It's about capital, it's about bandwidth, right? Now, when you're going abroad, the first challenge that you would face, and again, starting from an assumption that you already have an Indian company, you're already doing business here, is finding the capital to do it. The mistake that a lot of people make is they say, I will go abroad. They look at the resources they have and they say, I will do it within that, right? That sometimes fails because ultimately there are realities you have to face. If you have to localize a product, if you have to find a local sales team, you have to do global compliance. There is a bunch of cost involved here and a bunch of time that goes into it. So you have the biggest challenge is being able to have the foresight to put a box around it and say that this is how much it will cost me, this is what will actually happen, creating a B plan around it, which is realistic. Then walking backwards to see, okay, now if this is what it needs to do it in a meaningful way, do I have it? And what is the best entry strategy to get there? Right now, there's a soft landing, there's a hard landing. Right? The soft landing is that, like I said in the example that I gave you earlier, you find a distributor, or you know, like Vikrant was saying, you find customers, you do some early testing, you do some of those things to just test it. That's just pilot phase. But if you want to launch, then you need to do the whole 9 yards. You have to really figure out what it takes to do it, and then it is another startup that you're starting there, right? So how much money do you need? How do I raise that capital? And sometimes the answer might just be stay local, get bigger, raise more money, and then launch in a more meaningful way. Sometimes the idea is great, but the timing is not. So it's down to that.
See, I'll just add a small piece to that, right? In India, let us say sometimes SLA compliance may not be strictly adhered to. 19-20 का फर्क चलता है, right? In other geographies, it may not be the case. It may be a real make or break deal for the customer. So understanding that customer, understanding the values, the requirements is very, very essential. And that is a big challenge for many Indian companies to actually go global.
We are into spoken English powered by AI business. So we have app developed and we have few customers are also onboarded. With the vision and mission, say, help improve everyone's English broad statement, and many international players as well, like Elsa, Duolingo. So I want to know your insights as investors. What do you think about this business with respect to investing, is ample amount of funds available because we have some failures like Byju's and other things. So how it is treated in your eyes with respect to, is it a good investment? Because the problem statement is very good, right? Help everyone improve, English. Wanted both of your opinion.
See, I'll just probably make two statements there, right? One, what is your moat? And two, why can't I copy what you're doing and set up another business if I have more money? See, that is a question that many people don't answer. Because you can get outcompeted, you can get outpriced. No, I'm saying, if from an investor's point of view, these would be the questions that I would ask.
The question was, is it investors one of the favorite area where you want
From
to
a
invest?
sector point of view, I think, right?
That's
Meaning, I don't think EdTech has disappeared, right? I think education is still super priority in India, and given where we are as a demography, I think it's super critical. Of course, EdTech valuations have changed over the last couple of years. So I don't think, and that's why he didn't answer it that way, I guess, because it's not like the sector is dead. Sector is alive. If you have the answers to the questions that he asked, then you are probably going to get funded, right? So meaning, those are very tough questions.
Sectors have seasonalities. Some sectors get well funded in certain seasons, some don't, some go through challenges. All businesses go through those challenges, right? But some of the business fundamentals of whether do you have moat, whether do you have defensibility, can you stick it out, can you retain the customer, those fundamentals will always be diligenced by the investor.
And as validation, I can tell you there are several EdTech companies we're looking at as a fund. There's a team within our fund that looks specifically at EdTech. So if the sector was dead, then those people wouldn't be employed with us anymore. So I can tell you that it's very alive and kicking. So it's just about getting the fundamentals right, having answers to what's the problem you're solving, why you, why not somebody else, what's the defensibility of the model, does unit economics make sense? So everything that applies to every business applies to you, and then I think it's fully open.